Hello, good evening. Thank you very much for joining us here on Times Now. This is Times Now Live and I am Hina Gambhir. Viewers, after parota and popcorn, it's time for donuts. Yes, your favorite donut. Is it a food item or a bakery product? Now that's a confusion and hence the question. Should the GST on donut be 5% or 18%? Wondering why? Let me simplify it for you. Well, the Directorate General of GST Intelligence or DGGI asked for 100 crore rupees in tax dues from Himesh Foods Private Limited, which is the parent company of Mad Over Doughnuts. A show cause notice was also sent. Himesh Foods then filed a plea in the Bombay High Court. Now the question is why? Well, it's because of confusion, just like we had, around parota and then popcorn. Now, as per the petitioner, the food served on site or taken away from restaurants, that attracts 5% GST and hence that should be applicable for donuts also. But the tax authorities argue that donuts, which are often sold in quick service outlets, should actually be classified as bakery products and hence 18% GST should be applicable because bakery products in India have 18% GST. Now on Monday, the Bombay High Court heard the plea, heard this particular case. The tax authorities have been directed to not take any coercive action against Mad Over Doughnuts or its parent company. In fact, they have been asked to file a response, which means the court also saw merit in the petition and there is some kind of a confusion as to what should be the tax rate, what should be the GST rate as far as donuts are concerned. Now, on 24th of March, during the next hearing, we are expected to get some clarity whether GST on donut is going to be 5% or 18%. So that's the big story, viewers, that we are getting for you right now on Times Now. And joining us on the broadcast this evening is Abhishek A. Rastogi, who is an advocate. He is in fact the petitioner in the case. He is representing the donut case by the parent company of Mad Over Doughnuts. Mr. Abhishek Rastogi, thank you very much for speaking with us here on Times Now. Firstly, for the benefit of our viewers, can you simplify how come suddenly there is a tax demand of 100 crore rupees that has come? Because usually when a decision about GST rate in a particular product, particular good or service is taken, is decided, there are documents and it's all there, on the portals and all. So can you explain to us how come suddenly this thing has come? Has there been a change in the tax rate for donuts or something in the recent past?
See, as far as the decision of the GST Council is concerned, the GST Council is very clear that the tax with respect to the restaurant services would be at 5%. Now, some innovative taxmen from the government authorities created a distinction when these donuts are sold by these outlets which are akin to a restaurant and which in fact has a sitting space as well. And they said that this is not a supply of service, this is a supply of goods and hence must be taxed at the rate at which the goods are taxed. Now, the problem is like this will have huge implications all throughout the country because there are a lot of things which are sold. For instance, this is the issue of cake, pastries and donuts, for which the rate for the goods may be different. But when we consume these things in a restaurant or an eating joint or a canteen or mess for that instance, the rate is the beneficial rate which is given in larger public interest at the rate of 5%. And this is the decision which has been taken by the GST Council. When you see a lot of these outlets, there is sitting arrangement. The customization of these products happen. There is a central kitchen which happens in which the base of these doughs, what you call, is prepared and then is sent to the decentralized or the outlets, and their customization happens. The heating happens. You may want to heat it a bit for 20 seconds. You may want to add nuts to it, add dark chocolate to it. All that customization happens, including the sitting space which is there in each of these outlets, which makes these transactions a service. and I am not saying that, there is a specific provision in the GST law which addresses the composite supply of food articles and when that composite supply is to be treated as service. This is what the GST Act is saying. Schedule 2, Entry 6 of the GST Act very specifically provides that when these food articles are even sold, these will be treated as supply of service. Now, this investigation or this demand will have huge implications all throughout the country because it is not about only the donuts. It will have consequential effect on a lot of these things which are sold in such outlets.
Which means more confusion going forward as far as whether a particular product is a good or a service. I mean, something that's being questioned, especially after the kind of, confusion that we saw during Malabar Parota's case. Then the popcorn issue came up and now we have donut as well. We don't know whether it should be 5% or 18%. So if I've understood you correctly, Mr. Abhishek Rastogi, then you are trying to suggest that if, for example, if it's a Subway that we go to where we have a bread and, everything else is put inside and a sandwich is prepared and given to a customer, that's like a service that has been offered. So something like that can be taxed at 18% as per the rules. But if it's a ready-made product that you're selling, which is supposed to be sold like a good, has to attract 5% GST. Is that what the rules say right now?
What we are saying is that as far as the GST law is concerned, the law says that wherever there is a supply of any food article, that has to be treated as a service. For service, there is a specific entry which is taxing it at 5%. The moment there is a service element to it, the essence of that supply to be sold as goods loses. So for instance, if we are preparing the donuts, and these donuts are prepared and are being served with an element of service, this is no more a sale of donut per se, right? Even for that matter, if you order for this donut and you're sitting, let's say, in a full-fledged restaurant where there is a sitting of 100 people, this product would be taxed at 5%.
Okay.
What tax authorities are saying is that because these outlets are selling only donuts, they may not be full-fledged restaurants with 100 capacity or a big capacity. These are small restaurants. These supplies will be treated as supply of goods and not supply of services. The challenge is that under the GST law framework, there is a distinction between the rate when these products are sold as goods and when these qualify as restaurant services.
Okay.
So in our case, what we are saying is that not only the GST law provides that this will be treated as a service, there is a notification of the government, and that notification also defines in the explanation that what these restaurants would include, which extends to restaurant, eating joint, including mess, canteen, whether for consumption or for even takeaway. All of that is covered because GST Council had done this for the larger public interest. They do not want the higher tax brunt on the consumer.
Okay.
They want to keep that rate at 5%, and the executive action in this case will completely break the objective of the GST Council, which was to keep the rate low for these supplies when it comes to the restaurant services.
Okay. The question is, what happens next in this case? We know a hearing happened on Monday. Next hearing is on 24th of March. What is it, that you are expecting? What was said in the courtroom on Monday?
I am arguing for the petitioner here. I would not want to comment on what will happen in the court. But as far as what has happened in the court, the order is already in public domain. The court is of a clear view that in such a case, there is a case, one, which apparently on the looks of it seems very, very reasonable. Secondly, court has gone into all of these technical provisions in terms of how the GST Act addresses that. What are the notifications which are there for goods and for services? How restaurant services would be covered? What are the notifications? The court has also gone into the circular which has been issued by the CBIC to address these issues, and in fact that circular was highlighted before the court. Okay. And that circular very clearly says that even for takeaway services, so if you go to a restaurant and you take a supply of goods, for instance, you would want to pick something,
right,
and these are takeaway services. Even in those cases, there is a circular from the government that these will be taxed at 5% and not supply of goods. So I think the court has appreciated all of these facts to basically dominantly reach out to the conclusion that there is something wrong which is going on.
So who is really behind this confusion? That's the big question, and the government definitely must come forward and bring some clarity on it, because one after the other we've seen similar kind of things happening with several goods in the past as well. Popcorn was the latest one. The first one I think was the Malabar Parota, and now we're talking about donuts. We'll of course be tracking this story closely ahead as well. For now, thank you very much Mr. Rastogi for speaking with us here on Times Now and explaining to us the whole. Now go across to my colleague Meenakshi as well, who is joining us live, because this has led to a big debate on social media platforms as well. We've got Mohan Das Pai, the chairman of Aaron Capital, also reacting to this entire controversy. Meenakshi, over to you.
Well, yes, Hina, so as you succinctly put it, this entire debate around donuts is raging online, and you have a prominent citizen, a known name like Mohan Das Pai, you just mentioned. What does he have to say? And I'm going to just quote him verbatim. Bombay High Court to determine if donuts should be taxed at 5 or 18%. A great issue from GST. He calls it, quote unquote, the result of complex taxes. Earlier popcorn tax, now donut tax. What next? Peanut tax and any tax? Nirmala Sitharaman, GST Council, the Finance Ministry of India says a change is needed. Back to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Meenakshi, for the moment, for joining us with all of those inputs. In fact, we are now getting reactions from the Congress party as well. Congress came down heavily on the centre, terming that the GST is actually an instrument to harass people, and the rules should be simplified. Listen in.
You sure the finance minister eats donuts? So I don't know. If she doesn't eat donuts, then we are in for trouble. Then we'll face the highest slab on donuts, because like onions, like popcorns. So first of all, I think the finance minister should send us all a list of what all she eats and she doesn't eat, and then the policy of GST will be. Instead of simplifying the tax structure, GST in India has ended up as a tool of harassment, not just for traders, for state governments, for consumers, for everyone.
And we spoke to some donut lovers as well, people who eat donuts, buy donuts regularly. Here's what they told us.
See, actually it won't matter as much. I'm not as a regular customer for MOD, and even if the prices go high, so I rarely come over MOD for at least once or twice in a month. So prices going up and I'm buying for 1 or 2 doesn't as such matters for me. So it's okay, cool for me.
कभी भी हम लोग केक लेने जाते हैं तो बाय डिफ़ॉल्ट वो डोनट लेना ही पड़ता है, बिकॉज ये साथ में रहती है. तो डोनट का अगर प्राइस बढ़ेगा तो डेफिनेटली हमारे पॉकेट को थोड़ा सा खर्चा बढ़ेगा, तो डोनट का प्राइस बढ़ना नहीं चाहिए.
I think that would be, too much for a bakery store. But if this move is introduced, then maybe it will affect the public as well.
I feel that it can be a good move as well as it would be a bad move by introducing taxes on it.
And with this, we will slip into a very, very short break. We'll be back with lots more. Don't go anywhere.